Hello, and welcome to the Johnson Controls Blue Water webinar for August 2022. I am Craig Hanna, and I am grateful to serve as the engineering manager of the Johnson Controls Water Infrastructure Technology team. Our team is dedicated to designing, installing, and commissioning projects that reduce water loss, that increase utility staff efficiency, and that decrease operational and maintenance expenditures. In short, our team of subject matter experts exists solely to provide your water utility with the critical tools and training it needs to be a well-run and highly efficient organization. Please allow me to introduce to you two of my other teammates, Audrey Noel and Jonathan Gunn. Audrey is our intrepid team leader, and she lives in Southern California. I can readily affirm that Audrey is a true master of databases, and she is also an outstanding project manager. Audrey, would you please tell the audience more about yourself and some of your experiences in the water industry?
Absolutely. Thank you, Craig. I'm Audrey Noel, Business Development Leader for the Water Infrastructure Technology team here at Johnson Controls. I have about 7 years of experience in the industry and decades of experience in operations. I'm sitting about 2,913 miles to the east and a little bit north in Rochester, New York, is our stellar engineer and market manager, Jonathan Gunn. Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you. Just a short drive from California. But no, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Jonathan Gunn. I'm a market manager with the infrastructure team and have about 12 years in the industry. And like Craig, I serve in a number of different capacities with the American Water Works Association, including as the current chair of the Customer Metering Practices Committee. And I co-author a number of manuals and publications as well. So thank you all for being here with us this morning. And in our usual fashion, it seems every webinar we have at least a few new people on the call. So we're keeping with the trend of just explaining what you see on your screen. We recognize not everybody may be familiar with the On24 console. So as I'm going through here, you should see some orange dots popping up, but I'll start with what we call the media player. So this is where you're currently seeing my video feed. You'll see the video feed for the other presenters as we go through the webinar this morning. This is also where you will see a couple different videos that we have prepared for you today. So if you hear noise coming through your screen, but nobody's talking, make sure you're looking next door to the media player there. But by far and away to the right of the media player, that's the slide deck. That's where you'll see, a majority of the content that we will be speaking to this morning. We do have a number of poll questions. Those should pop out at you. They should pop up in a separate window, so you can answer those. If they don't, for some reason, the default should be in that window, so just be aware of that. To the left of the media player is the book a meeting function. So if you hear something today that you just want to talk more about, maybe an email or a Q&A just won't quite answer your question, by all means, please use that function. We'd love to talk to you, learn how we can help you solve any issues that you have. Below the media player is the webinar-related content. So this is content you can download and read at your leisure. It has to deal with some of the topics that we're covering today. To the right of that is a Q&A box. So as I mentioned, we do have a number of stoppages today to take your questions and answer your questions. So at any time during the webinar, please submit those questions, and then when we get to those appropriate spots, we will answer those for you. And last but not least, on the bottom of your screen, you have the ribbon or the icon bar. You see some of them look pretty familiar, and some of them are new. So, things like media player and the slide deck, things like that. If you are moving these windows around, which they can all be moved, they can all be resized, you can really make this experience your own. If for some reason you accidentally get rid of one of those, just go right down to the icon bar. You can get it back, no problem. There are also some other things there, such as the email us icon. That'll direct you right to a console where you can send us an email direct. There's also earning CEU credits. You are eligible to earn continuing education credits for this webinar. So if you're interested in those, please fill that form out. And then, as always, taking a survey, among other things. We always ask that you take that survey. Just let us know how we did, other things that you might want to hear about, and just providing that feedback to us so we can always make this an improved experience. So all of that being said, Craig, do you want to take us through the agenda for the morning?
Yes, I'll be glad to do that, Jonathan. We have a fun, informative, and hopefully helpful webinar for you today. I am looking forward to learning from Darcy Burke and Judy Zulfiker of Watermark Associates Now, Darcy and Judy will start our webinar with a valuable safety lesson on how to de-escalate conflicts with angry customers. And I know that de-escalating conflicts between people is a skill that many of us, myself included, need to master to both reduce stress and to have a better quality of life. And next, Audrey, Jonathan, and I will be talking about something that is of critical importance to any water utility that is considering either migrating to an AMI system or that may be in the process of implementing an AMI system network. We are going to give you the information that you need to answer many of the most common public health and safety concerns about exposure to radio frequency transmissions. Lastly, we will invite Darcy and Judy back to discuss managing the dark side of social media. Based upon our experiences, we believe that knowing how to properly address negative social media content is an area in which many water utilities are struggling at the moment. We know that this is a relatively new and somewhat unknown area for many of you today, and we are certain that your utility will benefit from what we covered today. And now, I would like to introduce to you our good friends, Darcy Burke and Judy Zulfiker from Watermark Associates. Darcy, you are not only the president and CEO of Watermark Associates, but you are also the board president of your local water utility. Could you please tell us more about your experiences in the water industry?
Thank you, Craig. I'd be happy to. I've actually been in the water industry for a couple of decades now. That sounds better than the actual number. So I actually started as the executive director for the California-Nevada section of the American Water Works Association, and I got to sit on a number of regulatory technical panels, help make policy in the state of California and the state of Nevada. I was recruited by Metropolitan Water District of Southern California for some special projects, and then I ended up as the Director of Public Affairs, Regulatory Affairs, and Legislative Affairs for the Municipal Water District of Orange County. And my partner in crime, Judy Zulfiker, helped me make the leap to the private side and start Watermark Associates, where we are a business solutions consulting firm.
All right, that's great. And Judy, you are both a marketing strategist and operations leader for Watermark Associates. Would you please tell us more about that role?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for having us today. Yes, I've had the pleasure of working with Darcy, both when she was working with Metropolitan Water District on a project and kind of working her through the whole design of a logo, which is the story in and of itself. But I have had experience in marketing, communications, advertising for over 20 years, and really enjoy working with those in both the water industry and the private sector on helping communicate appropriately, connect with their audiences, and really just get the word out about what they're trying to do.
All right. Well, thank you, Judy. And obviously, we are living through some very interesting times, and our society seems to be in a state of constant turmoil. And I presume that with this irritability may come an increase in encounters with angry customers for utility staff. What are some things that we can do to lower the tension when we are faced with a potential confrontation?
Well, that's a really good question, Craig. And what we're going to talk a little bit about today in this quick segment is that conflict, that de-escalation that you might have in an in-person situation. Some of these elements will also apply for if you're on the phone, but that's a different technique. So we're going to talk about the signs of conflict escalation, the appropriate responses, and what to do when that is just not working and you cannot de-escalate. So first of all, let's talk about the signs, recognizing the signs. You know, obviously there's some that are pretty obvious in that they're screaming and yelling and throwing a fit, but there are signs that you want to pay attention to whenever you're in a one-on-one conversation that you might not might not be being just loud. So you're looking at that body language, the clenching of fist, the tightening and untightening of their jaw, face turning red, a sudden change of body language, or how the person is getting into your personal space, change of eye contact, and that forever rooster stance, when they're really standing up tall, sticking out their chest, and really starting to get more aggressive in disruptive behaviors, are also the key element when they're cursing and getting loud. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darcy, who's going to talk about how you respond to these escalations of conflict.
Thank you, Judy. So the first thing and the most difficult thing of all this is that you need to remain calm. However, under no circumstances do you tell the individual to calm down. That's like putting gasoline on a fire. So really what you want to do is you want to be calm. You want to make sure you're standing at a non-threatening way, which means your arms are open or your arms are at the side. You want to make personal connection. So try to find something in common that you can talk about. Acknowledge how they're feeling. I understand you're upset. I'm listening. How can I help you? Try also to move the conversation to the future. I don't have that information right now, but I'd be happy to get back to you tomorrow. Is that okay? And once you have the acknowledgement of yes, because that's really that's where you want to get. Once they say yes, by psychology, they calm down, right? You didn't have to tell them to calm down. They do calm down. And it's really important, though, that if you say you're going to get back to them tomorrow, I highly encourage you that you do get back to them tomorrow. But they want to be heard. So letting them vent, letting them get it all out of their system before you respond, acknowledging how they're feeling, acknowledging what you're hearing, trying to find some common ground, and then get them to agree that you're either going to get back to them on a different day, that they will agree to do X, Y, or Z. And that's something in the future. You don't want to resolve it at that moment, because when they're upset, they can't think straight. They can only absorb information in very small bits. So it's really important that you listen, you acknowledge, and that you try to move the conversation to tomorrow or next week or something like that. And then when it's just not working, what do? Stop. Just stop. Realize the situation is probably not safe, and always have an exit strategy of how you're going to leave. If it means calling 911, if it means using your radio, have a plan to protect yourself, because no matter what you do, you're irreplaceable, right? One of our water operators here, one of his first days, he had the opportunity to go terminate service, and that service happened to be at the local Hells Angels clubhouse. So needless to say, service was not terminated that day. He was young, but he was very smart. He left, and the next day the sheriff accompanied him to have that termination happen. So again, your safety is the most important. Have an exit plan, remain calm. And if you can't remain calm, then you also know it's time to leave.
All right. Well, thank you, Darcy and Judy, for your invaluable safety message on how to de-escalate a confrontation with an angry utility customer. And we look forward to hearing more from you later in the webinar about how water utilities should deal with negative social media content. And in case you are new to our webinars, we welcome you. And we would like for you to know that we have been installing mobile AMR system projects since 1999, and we've been installing fixed network AMI system projects since 2004. We have seen some truly remarkable things over the course of 23 years and 130 plus installations across this country, but we would never be so bold as to say that we've seen it all. We can assure you, however, that approximately 2% of your account holders may strongly object to the installation of an AMI system. And our goal for both today's webinar and for next month's webinar is to prepare you for when something like this happens in your utility. The photograph that you see here was taken from my first real encounter with someone who obviously was very much opposed to smart water meters on one of our projects for a utility in Indiana. You can see that the account holder has double padlocked the meter lid closed to prevent us from installing an AMI system endpoint at their residence. They have also used a paint pen on the meter lid to express their opposition to the project. Audrey, you have another photograph from one of your projects in Colorado that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Speaking of expressive, here's my favorite image from someone who was clearly opposed to smart meters on one of our AMI system projects in Colorado. As many of you know, there's so much misinformation about smart meters and public health out there that it's often difficult knowing exactly where to begin. Craig, why don't you start by explaining some terms about exposure to radio frequency communication that everyone should both know and understand, after we first take a poll to see what all of you think about the risk that smart water meters and AMI systems pose to public health.
Okay, so we're going to ask you, what health risks do smart meters and AMI systems actually pose to humans? Is it a negligible risk? Is it about the same as consuming 1 or 2 glasses of wine per day? Maybe about the same as regular tobacco use? Or is it comparable to long-term exposure to radium, mercury, lead, or asbestos? Or you just don't know? So if you will, enter your answers.
This is always a fun one.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on. Before my wife and I had children, we went to see a movie nearly every weekend. One of the movies that I do remember from that long ago time was called Uptown Girls. It was an enjoyable movie that was released in 2003. Dakota Fanning played an intense, driven, and focused 8-year-old girl named Ray. The late Brittany Murphy played Molly Gunn. Molly is the 22-year-old daughter of a famous but deceased rock star. Molly is fun-loving, free-spirited, and completely carefree until she learns that all of her money has been stolen and she is suddenly bankrupt. A desperate Molly is offered a job as Ray's nanny. The two completely different personality types have several clashes at first. Whenever Molly is trying to teach Ray to simply relax and enjoy the moment, Ray responds that fundamentals are the building blocks of fun. And when discussing smart meters and AMI systems, there are 5 fundamental terms that you need to know and understand before you can explain to someone how these devices pose no health risk to the public. Please bear with us as we quickly go through these 5 terms, and then we can have some fun. First, it is the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, that regulates all wireless communications in the United States. FCC policy governs public health and safety in terms of exposure to electromagnetic or radio waves. And exposure to electromagnetic or radio waves is measured in terms of power density, or the electromagnetic wave energy in milliwatts in a transmission over a defined area. Looking at the formula, you can easily see that power density decreases very quickly because of the principle of free space attenuation. Free space attenuation means that radio waves weaken with the square of the distance traveled away from the transmitter. Because of free space attenuation, we can have radio and television transmitters with over 50,000 watts of power in urban areas and not suffer any adverse health effects from them. You can see from free space attenuation demonstrated in nature whenever you toss an object into a swimming pool or throw a rock into a pond. Here's a video from Pavel Adakovich that illustrates this concept very nicely. And you can see here the waves start out and then expand until they completely dissipate over time. Lastly, free space attenuation is a major reason why radio frequency energy from a water meter endpoint at a distance of 10 feet has about 1/1000th as much power as a cell phone transmission. Another important principle is the amount of electromagnetic wave energy to which one can safely be exposed. The FCC has 2 classes of maximum permissible exposure: occupational and general population. Occupational MPE is for those who knowingly choose to work around electromagnetic waves, such as radiological nurses and technicians, and those who work around television, radio, and cellular transmitters. Everyone else falls into the general population MPE. And if you will, notice that the exposure limit for the general population is 5 times less than the occupational MPE limit. We have provided you with the MPE limits for the most common mobile AMR and fixed network AMI systems at the bottom of the slide as a reference. And we encourage you to download the slide deck from the related content module on your console for future reference. There are 2 other very important facts about the maximum permissible exposure limit calculations that you really need to know. First, the FCC sets the distance between a person and the transmitter for those calculations at 20 centimeters, or just shy of 8 inches. And realistically, one must ask, how often are you less than 8 inches away from your water meter? Second, the maximum permissible exposure limits are averaged over a 30-minute period for the general population, which brings up the concept of duty cycle, or how often the water meter endpoints are transmitting. When reviewing the duty cycle, it is important that you understand how the transmission interval depends upon both the type of meter reading network and the network provider. With either a mobile AMR system or a hybrid AMR-AMI system, a water endpoint will typically transmit every 15 seconds or less. Duty cycles for fixed network AMI systems with either a 450 to 470 megahertz or a 900 to 950 megahertz transmission frequency are quite different, however. In these types of fixed networks, a water endpoint will transmit only once every 4 or 6 hours, which is a very long time between transmissions. The transmission interval for a fixed network AMI system that uses cellular endpoints primarily depends upon the network provider. One cellular AMI system provider chooses to transmit 4 times per day on workdays and only once per day on weekends and holidays. Another cellular AMI system provider chooses to transmit only once per day. The endpoint power source directly affects the duty cycle. Both water and natural gas endpoints rely upon battery power, whereas endpoints for electric utilities draw power from the electric circuit. Consequently, endpoint transmission intervals are measured in hours for both water and natural gas endpoints in order to achieve a 20-year lifespan. Electric AMI system endpoints, however, may transmit as frequently as every 5 minutes because they have an infinite source of power. And to confirm the actual duty cycle that a utility with an AMI system will experience, a large electric utility on the West Coast collected the duty cycle data from a total of 6,800 electric meters in their network. The endpoint with the maximum duty cycle transmitted for a total of 8 minutes and 17 seconds per day, which is really not that much time. The key point to remember is that the average duty cycle was 0.06% per day. This means that the average endpoint in an AMI system is transmitting for less than 1 minute per day. In summary, let's talk about the actual power density to which most people are exposed from a water endpoint. Earlier in the webinar, we said that the average AMI system endpoint has a duty cycle of only 0.06%. If one uses a very high-end duty cycle of 4% and an endpoint that has 1 watt of transmission power in the common 902 to 928 megahertz or ISM band, the power density is only 0.01 milliwatts per square meter. What does that really mean? It means that this normal transmission is equivalent to only 1.6% of the maximum permissible exposure limit for the general population as set forth by the FCC. We finished covering the fundamentals, and now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jonathan and Audrey for the fun part after we take a poll question. And the question we have for you now is, what is the maximum transmission power from a water endpoint in an AMR or AMI system endpoint today? Is it 1 watt, 2 watts, 1,200 watts, or 50,000 watts? We'll give you a little bit of time to make your choice.
We'd have no communication issues with 50,000 watts, Craig.
Oh, I know. All right. It looks like most of you said 75%. And the maximum transmission power on the market today is actually 2 watts, but most systems do transmit at 1 watt of power. So, Jonathan, tell us about some of the things that you see out there on the internet about smart meters and health and safety.
Yeah, thank you, Craig, and appreciate you covering those fundamentals there. So as Craig mentioned, it is time, let's have a little bit of fun here. We want to cover some of the most common concerns about smart meters that we've seen. So our first complaint is that smart water meters only benefit the company, not the water customers. And Audrey, I'm actually wondering, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, the claim that smart water meters only benefit the company, not the water customers, is false. And we have 4 examples from Johnson Controls customers to prove the value that AMI systems can provide to the account holder. In this example, the account holder can tell the utility to notify them via text, email, or automated phone call whenever their daily usage exceeds their average historical daily usage by an amount that they determine, such as once, twice, or perhaps 3 times the historical average. In this example, the utility will be contacting these 3 account holders by a method that they have chosen to make them aware of a potentially high water bill. In this second example, the account holder either may be away or this may be a rental property that's supposed to be vacant. The account holder can notify the utility to inform them by email, text message, or automated call if there's any water usage at the property. These 3 account holders are about to be made aware of usage at their respective properties. The landlord can now be made informed that someone's using water at the rental property, and that family away on vacation will know if their neighbors have decided to fill their swimming pool from the hose bib while they're out of town. This feature can be used to inform vacationing homeowners of leaks and potential burst pipes during the winter.
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. And that's that swimming pool one. We conjured that one up. We've never seen that one ever. Right?
I wish.
Well, thank you. So in this next example, a member of a small church used the customer engagement portal to contact the utility about an issue with their water bill. It seems that the water bill was high, and so high, in fact, that the church members took it upon themselves to shut off water service to the church building except for on Sundays. Except for on Sundays. The person from the church who contacted the utility remarked that even with the water shut off to the building 6 days a week, the total water usage was equal to 20 gallons per day. The church member wondered if the new ultrasonic meter that was serving the church could be inaccurate. Now, the city's customer service rep used the hourly data from the AMI system and analyzed the usage using software in the customer engagement portal. The customer service rep confirmed that there was, in fact, no usage during the week and that water only flowed through the meter from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Sundays. The data showed that there was a small continuous leak on the property that was causing the high bill. And then in a further act of kindness, the customer service rep attached several logs from other Sundays to help the church in their effort to locate the source of the leak. This example demonstrates how a customer engagement portal and AMI system data can be used to conserve water, reduce high bill complaints, and create a spirit of goodwill between the utility and the account holders.
In this last example from one of our customers, an account holder was clearly upset about their water bill. While no capitalization was used in this email, the account holder chose to use not 1, not 2, but 3 exclamation points in their message to the water department. The customer service representative politely responded by providing the account holder with the daily usage logs from the months of August and September. This city does not mandate a separate water meter for irrigation, and the hourly usage data from this account showed that the timer for the irrigation system needed some adjustment. Whenever the customer watered their lawn, the irrigation system ran from midnight until 7 a.m. and used approximately 3,500 gallons of water. One wonders at how many hundreds of thousands of gallons of potable water will be saved each year from just this one customer, because they now know the exact source of their high water bill and how to easily resolve their problem.
I agree completely. And these next two complaints were very similar, so we're going to address them together. The first complaint is that, quote, smart water meters emit high levels of pulse radiation. And the second complaint is that, quote, peak levels of this pulse radiation are comparable to those emitted by cell towers. What are your thoughts on that one, Audrey?
Well, every mobile AMR and fixed network AMI system on the market transmits at less than 2 watts of power, and most water endpoints transmit using only 1 watt of power. This is primarily because water endpoints are battery-powered devices that are expected to provide up to 20 years of service. Transmitting at a higher wattage would either require additional batteries and thus increase both the size and the cost of each endpoint, or it would shorten the useful life of the endpoint to an unacceptable level. While mobile AMR system endpoints transmit for a few milliseconds every 15 seconds or less, fixed network AMI system endpoints transmit for a few milliseconds only once every 4, 6, 8, or even 24 hours, whereas cellular sites transmit continuously at 100 watts of power or more per channel. Thus, water AMR and AMI system endpoints transmit at just 1% of the power of an urban or suburban cell tower.
Awesome. Thank you, Audrey. Here's another complaint that is a little more relevant for those of you who live in warmer climates, i.e. not where I am in New York, where both the water meters and the AMR or AMI system endpoints are installed outdoors. The complaint is that, quote, smart meters deployed along streets means children walking to school, drivers and their passengers, people walking dogs or exercising for health will all be exposed to dangerous microwave radiation. Audrey, I know you have some pretty convincing data on this complaint. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Sure, let's talk about the actual power density to which most people are exposed from a water meter endpoint. Earlier in the webinar, we said that the average AMI system endpoint has a duty cycle of only 0.06%. If one uses a very high-end duty cycle of 4% and an endpoint that has 1 watt of transmission power in the very common 902 to 928 megahertz or ISM band, the power density is only 0.01 milliwatts per centimeter squared. This is equal to just 1.6% of the maximum permissible exposure limit for the general population as set by the FCC. I would also like to mention that microwave frequencies are not used in either AMR or AMI system transmissions. Microwave frequencies are 1 to 1,000 gigahertz bandwidth. AMR, AMI frequencies are in the 450 to 470 megahertz, 900 to 950 megahertz, and 4G LTE-M cellular bandwidth. Each cellular carrier has a different frequency, but they are not in the microwave band. Furthermore, the firm of Richard Tell Associates Incorporated conducted a study in 2008 that was a comparison of radio frequency power density in the everyday environment. Standing a little more than a yard away from a microwave oven that's in use can expose you to over 6,000 times more energy per square centimeter than that produced by a water meter endpoint. Drinking coffee in a cyber cafe exposes you to between 6,000 and 12,000 times more energy per square centimeter than that's produced by a water meter endpoint. And carrying on a conversation with your cell phone at your ear exposes you to between 1,800 and 6 million times more energy per square centimeter than that's produced by a water meter endpoint. I'd like to point out that while the study may have been conducted in 2008, the results are still valid today because both the frequencies used by these devices and the transmission power output haven't changed over time.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Audrey and Craig, for really giving us quite a bit of information there. And I think I can say with confidence that there's at least one person on the call today who feels more equipped to have some of this dialogue with constituents that may be having some similar concerns. And the best part is we're not even done yet. So before we bring Darcy and Judy back to talk about dealing with the dark side of social media, we would like to pause for your questions. So earlier I pointed out the Q&A module on your console, so please type in your questions there to ask us more information on a topic that we covered today or to clarify something that we said. And while you are typing those in, I did want to pause for a minute to ask you a question for the audience, and that is, what can Johnson Controls do for you? If you're needing to replace those old inaccurate water meters or electric meters or gas meters, if your mobile AMR system has reached the end of its useful life, or if the time is right for you to migrate to a fixed network AMI system, we can help. We can also provide you with tools and technology to reduce both the cost and volume of non-revenue water with automated leak detection, pressure and temperature sensing, automated flushing, and many other solutions. And best of all, we can provide this to you at a turnkey price with no change orders. So if you're interested in learning more, please reach out to us using the book a meeting function on your screen or using the email icon on the ribbon bar at the bottom of your screen to let us know what challenges that we can help you overcome. I would also like to invite you to help other water utilities in our next webinar. Jonathan Swift, the author of Gulliver's Travels, wrote more than 3 centuries ago that, quote, falsehood flies and the truth comes limping after it. There's simply too much misinformation about smart meters and AMI systems out there on the internet for us to cover in only one webinar. So we will spend our September webinar answering more of the most common questions about public health and safety. We will also talk about data privacy concerns and offer some advice for creating an opt-out program for that 2% or so of your account holders who will be adamantly opposed to this form of communications technology. So, if you have heard of some especially challenging comments or concerns about smart meters and their perceived effect on public health or data privacy that you would like for us to specifically address in our next webinar, please email them to us at bluewater@jci.com. With that, let's check. All right. Craig, I am not seeing any questions at this time.
I'm not either, but if you think of some later, just send us an email at bluewater@jci.com, and we will get right back to you, as well as probably include them in our webinar next month.
All right. Well, again, before I hand it to Darcy and Judy here, I did have a quick poll question for the group here. And the question is, does your utility have a written social media policy? Yes, no, or unsure, or maybe it's not applicable if you're not a utility. But by a written social media policy, we're talking about how your staff, something for your staff, how they interact with people in the utility, what they are allowed to do and not do on social media, those sorts of things. So, does your utility have a written social media policy for your staff? I know I'm seeing some submissions come in here. I want to give it another quick second. Going. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right. Wow. All right. Quite a few actually have a plan in place. So excellent. Well, I guess with that as kind of a backdrop, Darcy, Judy, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk to us about managing the dark side of social media.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I learned a lot through your presentation. So thank you for sharing all that information. I want you to think about social media like your lobby. So depending on what channel it is, you're going to interact with the dark side or maybe those angry customers or misguided customers, just like you would in the lobby. And some of the things we're going to lay out here is how you make that lobby experience, that virtual lobby experience, even better. How you are able to interact with them and make it a good experience for everybody. So, sorry about that. So I want to start with the agenda. We're going to talk about social media policy, managing social media, and why it's important to do so. Some effective tactics that will help you. I'm going to go over some social media personalities that you probably already know and have had an interaction with, and kind of give you some tools on how to deal with each one. We're going to talk about response considerations, what you need to think about before you respond to people. Think first, write second. Some protocols that we're going to share with you, and I think that we also have some tools for you in related content, Craig, that people can download themselves. And then this is a tease that next month we'll be back, and we're going to talk about a case study in Odessa, Texas that recently had a water main break, and how we're going to analyze their social media and their responses. So, oops, sorry, Judy, I think you're up.
So first of all, let's talk about why a social media policy is important. Now, 42.9% of you obviously understand that. For those that are not having a social media policy, or maybe some cities or other organizations that are on the line, a social media policy is recommended for any organization. We work with a lot of different, whether it's utilities or private nonprofits, et cetera. We recommend a social media policy for any organization that's on social media. because this helps you set the rules. How are we going to play in this sandbox? What is acceptable? What's not acceptable? What are the responsibilities of both your organization as well as your guests and your audience? It also sets the authority of who's responsible for what and who's going to be responding when, et cetera. And we'll get into more detail on that later. It also is expected by social media communities. A lot of times when you're responding and answering certain questions, they're going to call to, what are your social media policies? What is the policy and why do you have it? And where do you have it? Because they're going to be looking for that. And the final thing is, it is very much a protection for you and your organization on how you can deal with your audience in a proper manner. I'm going to just kind of give you a story of why it's important. Obviously, trust and credibility. I will tell you that ignoring the situation will not go away. And an example of that actually was a client that we were dealing with. We were not managing their social media, but we were consulting with them on some communication. This is an organization that has a bunch of retail stores, and they're a tourist attraction that receives many guests every weekend and throughout the week. They had a guest that came in with a pit bull. It is clearly posted on the location that particular breed is not welcome at their location. However, the guest said that this dog is a service dog. And so there wasn't really a policy, or it wasn't communicated necessarily to the staff on how to deal with that. So there was an altercation, and the guests were asked to leave because of having this particular breed of dog. The guests then came on to social media and really wanted to know what the policy was at this venue. And the owners of the venue chose to not respond. They didn't completely ignore, well, they ignored it because they didn't respond. But the reason they didn't respond is they were waiting to get exactly what they should say from their attorneys. And the attorneys took at least a week and a half to even take a look at it and try to get some type of response. In the meantime, because there was no response and the guest felt completely unheard, and they were asking, why are you discriminating against my service dog? The entire world of pit bull lovers descended upon this organization's Facebook page, literally crashed it, commenting on every single post, talking about how horrible this organization was because they didn't love dogs. And it was a bit of a mess to clean up. And that was all because they tried to ignore it. And they didn't have a policy for how to deal with these situations, and were not, calling on the guidance that they were being given. So that is why it is important. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darcy, who's going to talk about some effective tactics that you can use to avoid this very type of situation.
Well, thank you, Judy. I think it's really important that, first of all, we understand your position. You, as staff, report to a general manager or city manager, and they report to the board. And the board has an opinion about everything. And they may be very discouraging of why you have a social media presence. They may be telling you, take it down, block that person's running against me. It can become very political. So by following best practices and downloading these protocols, our goal is to help you have the tools not only to respond to your social channel audiences and guests, but to your internal audience and to your city officials or your board. So to Judy's point, if they had just posted, we hear and understand your concern. My name is Darcy Burke. I am the public relations person or a PIO for the city. Here's my direct line and my phone number. I'll be back in an hour with more information. How can I help you? All of those things I just read out are showing that you care. Show them that you care before you tell them what you know. I told them who I was, my real phone number, my real email. I gave them options to discuss it offline. I told them when I was going to get back to them or that I was there to help. And I gave them options of how they can communicate with me. So from the other guest perspective, let's think that lobby again. we're providing above and beyond better customer service. And in this age, I can tell you customer service is lacking on all levels. And people, to Craig's point in the beginning of this webinar, are at a heightened level, right? And they're also not used to dealing with people face to face. So I kind of want to go over the social media personalities. I love this because these are the people that we all talk about and we experience. There's trolls, ragers, unhappy, and misguided. So let's talk about the trolls. Trolls lurk on all the different social media sites. Their purpose is to cause trouble. The difference that between some of these, a troll and a rager, is really that the troll has a digital web presence. They have a website. They have a blog. They may have a blog, although that's highly unusual and unlikely. They are abusive. They are name-calling. Goes back to your social media, what's allowed. I encourage all of our clients to proceed with caution. Be kind, be professional, empathize, be transparent, follow all the protocols that we just talked about. Determine if the post and the behavior of this guest is outside your policy. Because if it is, you can remind them, I'm sorry, profanity is not allowed on our site. I'm going to warn you now, I removed that post, but I will block you from the site if that behavior continues. Remember, the experience is not just between you and the troll. It's all those other people, all your other customers, all your other residents that are participating in that channel. Ragers are very similar to trolls, although they don't have a digital media presence yet, meaning they don't have a huge following, they don't have a website, and they don't have a blog. These are the people that most people refer, it's a guy in a basement that's just trolling and trying to figure out what's going on to cause problems. Remember, again, you handle them the same way you do a troll. You follow your protocols, you respond, you're timely, you're professional, you take it offline, and you call them out on their misbehavior in a very professional way. Unhappy. This is the one that actually can cause you one of the most issues. If someone's taking their customer service issue to social media, Houston, you have a problem. They may have had a bad experience. Whatever, whether it's true or not, what they're saying, their perception is they were not heard and they were not taken care of. Absolutely respond promptly, respond in a positive manner, redirect them again. I'm here to help you. My name is Darcy. Please email me at, or if you'd like to call me, here's my direct line. Obviously, they've had an experience which doesn't really matter whether you can solve that right now or not, but they need to be heard. They're pretty desperate if they take it on social media. And that's something that you can share back with your team in your customer service department or that works the counter. They want to be heard. And those are the ones that get the most empathy from other customers or other citizens on your social media page. So it's really important to take care of them first. Misguided. Oh, these are my favorites. So mavens, everybody's got a maven. And I'm going to use the example that you had earlier today, Jonathan, Craig, and Audrey, about someone believes that the AMR system is causing ill health effects. So, and they're seen as an influencer or a maven, meaning that they are an expert in something, but they have a little bit of information. How do you respond? You want to set the record straight. Again, tell them who you are. Tell them your role in the agency or city that you're serving. Refer to that study that Audrey said. Here is the information. It's not us. It's a third party. If there is a local community college that also may have a study or a professor that you can use as a reference, look for those third party sources. The American Water Works Journal is a great place to send people. Anything that's going to be outside your organization that has validation. And give them the information in a very professional, not like, oh, you're wrong, but, oh, let me share this information. You may not have seen it. So that you're not discrediting the expert, because if they're seen as an expert, that's just going to make you look bad, but you're discrediting the information they're providing. So it's really, really important that you manage that appropriately. And that means really you have to do some homework. I know that you talked, Craig, earlier about here's some of the common questions we get or the common complaints. As a representative of your city, your water utility, you know the frequently asked questions you get. Your customer service department or your counter people can tell you, oh, we get this all the time. It's really good to have some information ready and handy to provide that so that you have some, I don't want to say canned, but prepared information that you can share with people. And you can also say, we get that question a lot. I can even refer you to our website where we have frequently asked questions on that topic. Or let me get to our public works director. He may be able to answer your question better. Is there a good time that we can call you? Right? So that you're validating, you're empathizing, you're listening, but more appropriately, you're responding. And when I say responding, I don't mean just sending out, this is our message and this is what we're saying. Judy made a point earlier that it's really like the sandbox, right? These are the rules in which we're playing. It's about engaging with your customers and your residents so that it's not just speaking at them, but speaking with them. You would not just speak at them in your lobby. You would have a conversation. And these are the tools that I'm trying to give you, and Judy and I are trying to share with you, to craft that conversation in a positive light, right? Typically, as government or as a water utility, you're not the top of the trust train, right? You know, we're up there with Congress, unfortunately. So these things where you're making it personal, that you're building trust and credibility, that you're providing third-party expertise to validate your statements is super critical in the trust formula. Considerations. The beauty about social media is you have a moment to pause. It's not like you're in the lobby. You don't have to necessarily think immediately on your feet. So when you're crafting that response, when you're taking the time to lay it out and write out what you're going to say, let's think of these 5 considerations. Transparency. Again, say your name. If you're signing into your account, make sure the account for your city or your water utility isn't just City of Wonderful. It should be my name at the City of Wonderful. They need to make it personal. You don't want it to look like it's automated. You don't want it to look like you want to keep that veil of privacy between you. Transparency means you're very open to who you are and what your role is. You're going to reference third-party sources, or you're going to reference experts within your own organization, including your board or your city council. If this is a question that's beyond operations and goes to policy, there's nothing wrong with saying, I will get our mayor to call you back. Someone from the mayor's office will reach out to you, right? Influence. This is kind of means that I understand that you only have X amount of time and you have Y amount of responsibilities. If you hear that people are talking about your organization on a media channel that has not been approved by your organization, that you don't participate in, I'm going to encourage you to explore that at a different time. See if one of your partners and collaborators can respond for you, but don't waste your time on channels that you don't have a presence on. Keep your tone professional, keep it positive, be timely. Meaning I'm not saying you have to type right now. Sometimes when you do that, it's not the best response, but I'm telling you to be timely, like don't let too much time pass. Let people know when you can get back to them if you can't get back to them right away. With that, I'm going to give it to Judy to talk about some other protocols and tools that we have for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Darcy. And I know we only have a few minutes, so I'm just going to go through this rather quickly, but do remember that you can download a template for your policies and protocols. It is based on the United States Air Force policies and protocols, and it's going to help you literally deal with positive posts, negative posts, and breach of policy. So for all of the engineers in the room, you're going to love this because it is really laid out with an if this, then that kind of structure. It's very follow the plan. We're going to go through positive. Positive is easy. Positive is you pretty much are going to accept that post, and if there's nothing of value to add to it, then you're just going to let it stand. But I would say for that engagement portion of it, like Darcy was saying, you want to like it or engage with the post, but you don't need to necessarily respond. If you can add value, then do so. That's part of that conversation back and forth. The worst thing ever is for an organization to just post, and never engage with their audience. You're going to get a lot better experience on both sides when you do that. What we really want to know is what do we do with those negative posts? Well, and I'm sorry, you probably can't see this. Again, it's clearly stated in the policy, and you can kind of follow along. The biggest thing is it something that is valid, and you can fix it, or is it something that is not valid and you need to address the fact that it's not valid? And then that's the two decision trees that you're going to need to go. If you can fix it, do it quickly. And to Darcy's point, respond in a very transparent manner, make sure that you have a person that they can connect with, and take it offline as best as you can. Both sides are take it offline as best as you can, because you do not want to have these conversations out in the public that can get misconstrued and then people start adding in. The key is it's okay for those that want to comment on it. The ideal situation is when you have your own customers coming to your defense. And that is when it's ideal, when they also see that this rager or this troll is not talking about the right thing, is off on a side track and needs to get back on point. The best point is when your customers are responding for you. And then the final thing, sometimes you just it's breach of policy. They're cursing, they're using foul language, they're threatening. And that's where the policy really comes into play, because you don't want to just remove somebody. You want to give them that warning that we're going to remove you. If it's bad language, of course, according to your policy, you would remove them or hide them. But if you have this decision tree and the policies that will help you know when it is appropriate to respond and what way to respond as you go through the process. So again, these policies are downloadable as part of this presentation, and we're happy to ask any questions. But before we do that, I did want to go through this poll just to understand those that are on social media with your organization, which social media channels are you currently using? I think Jonathan can run this poll for us. I'll let you click forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll give it a minute here on the page. I know this is a all that applies situation. It's not just a one question here. So if you do use multiple services, please take a minute and just indicate what those are. And I'll give it an extra moment here just so people can finish their clicks here. Let's get a 5-second countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, get your responses in. Generous 1. Okay.
Oh, very nice. Interesting. LinkedIn is very popular. I love to see that. Interesting that Instagram is not. And we haven't. TikTok is fairly new. Not a lot of businesses are using it. Not a lot of relevancy there, but great. Well, thank you guys all for your input. This is very insightful, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thank you very much for all you and Darcy for just a tremendous amount of information there. I know I heard a commentator say a long time ago that one of the subtle perks of social media is that local issues can turn into real big issues on a national level for sometimes for no reason. So you definitely don't want to be on the receiving end of that, and we definitely appreciate you giving us some of the insight on how to avoid that. So again, if you do have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A box here. But in the interest of time here, I'm not seeing anything right now. So in the interest of time, we'll keep moving forward. And Audrey, do you want to kind of close us out here?
Sure, absolutely. If you missed our special webinar last month on funding and financing water and wastewater infrastructure projects, you can find that episode on YouTube by searching for JCI Blue Water Webinar. You can also access the link for this webinar in the related content module on your console. All of the previous webinars and some of our other digital events that you may not yet have seen can be found on the JCI YouTube channel. Coming up in next month's webinar, which will be held on September 21st, we will continue our series on smart meters and AMI systems by giving you the answers to more common questions and comments about public health and safety. You really need to be with us next month because we'll be discussing the topic of electromagnetic hypersensitivity. Or EHS. We'll also be covering how to address questions that your account holders may be having about data privacy. We've invited Darcy and Judy back to share a case study from a water utility in Texas. This event, which generated much negative social media content, happened earlier this summer, and we know that it will be well worth your time to learn from this case study. We'd like to thank both Darcy Burke and Judy Zolfiger from Watermark Associates for joining us today. Please invite your friends and colleagues to attend the Blue Water webinars, and we invite you to submit your discussion topics for future webinars. We want to know what's important to you and your utility.
Yeah, and looking at that picture brings back memories of going back to school and two-a-day football practices in 100-degree heat and 85% humidity. And I can't say that I miss two-a-day workouts, but I do miss those Friday night lights sometimes. Well, at least until my knees and ankles start hurting again. And I know Jonathan still enjoys playing in his hockey league. And good luck to those of you with children and grandchildren who are returning to school, college, or university this month, and hope it all goes well for them. And again, if you have any questions or comments, please send us an email at bluewater@jci.com.
Yeah, and I actually coach my kids in Pop Warner football, Craig, which is a great way to close this out. Loving memory of Ken Biggerstaff, our coach and mentor, will be missed, gone too soon. Thank you guys for attending the webinar.
Thank you. We hope to see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.